Hello, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, football fans across the nation and around the world. This is Tim May. I'm coming to you live from the Kemah Boardwalk Pier with my good friend Jeff Snook. Obviously, Ohio State had the weekend off last week, so my buddy Jeff Snook and I decided to take the opportunity to come down to Texas and see a little bit of football. We were primarily interested in watching Alabama play live against Texas A&M and kind of get an idea in our minds how Ohio State might match up against the number one team in the country, Alabama. But before we get to that, it was a big weekend for college football across the nation, and especially for Ohio State, because that three-way tie with Georgia was obliterated by Georgia getting upset by South Carolina. Was that a stunning upset for you, Jeff?
Yeah, Tim, it was. I tell you what, I've seen South Carolina play this year. I saw them against Alabama and I think Kentucky. And I thought there is no way in heck they could go into Athens.
I like where you used the word heck there. Appreciate it.
No, I don't swear.
Yeah.
But my friends know that. But I thought there's no way in heck they could go into Athens and steal a win from Georgia. It just goes to show. I mean, they're 25-point underdog. If you're not ready to play and you turn the ball over, anything can happen. So they're -4 in turnovers. So, and let's face it, Will Muschamp didn't really do a coaching genius job on that game. They won in spite of him.
Yes.
And that just goes to show. But here's the bottom line. Georgia's not out of it by any means. They can still control their own destiny. And Florida lost at LSU. They still control their own destiny because they beat it at the end of October in the world's largest outdoor cocktail party. The winner of that still has a chance to win out and beat the SEC West champion and get into the playoff.
Yeah. The little train that runs around here like once every 20 minutes is now making its path behind and under us here.
And train. It's like being in Key West.
Exactly. The interesting thing though is you look at the big Power 5 conferences around the country. Lo and behold, look at the Big Ten. With 4 undefeated teams. Would you have picked those 4 to be the undefeated teams at this point?
No, there's no way. I thought Minnesota would be. Obviously, Penn State has some talent. Penn State looks so much better on defense they have in recent years. They look quicker to me. Like their linebackers can move. Their defensive line looks very quick, but there's no way in the world I thought Minnesota would be undefeated. If we'd have picked a dark horse in the West, everybody jumped on Nebraska.
Yeah.
Well, Nebraska's shown that they're not quite ready yet under the second year of Scott Frost, so they got a ways to go. But the Big Ten with Wisconsin, Penn State, oh boy.
Yeah, that's okay.
Penn State, Wisconsin, and Ohio State, those are 3 pretty good teams, and we'll see how that shakes out once they start playing each other.
Yeah, we'll get the next train when it comes by. Bottom line, Minnesota is probably the surprise team in a lot. I mean, the way they destroyed Nebraska the other night. But then on top of that, I think people have had a propensity to write off P.J. Fleck as a little bit of a joke, when in fact he's not. He took Western Michigan and turned them into a BCS, a team that got to play in a not a BCS but a CFP bowl game. And to think that this guy doesn't have some substance along with the way he likes to sell his program. Now I think people are catching on. That may be the surprise program in the country this year. But I'm getting down back to what you and I are kind of our ostensibly at least the excuse of coming down to watch Alabama play at Texas A&M was to get an eyeball test on Alabama. We saw them start slow against the Texas A&M team that clearly needed to show itself, was going to be ready for this game. It was 106,000 people in Kyle Field, the largest crowd they've ever had there. And of course, Alabama, I'm not saying they came out slow, but Texas A&M came out firing with Kellen Mond. But then Alabama, kind of like what Ohio State did against Michigan State a couple of weeks ago, methodically put them away. I think you're seeing Alabama, which has had all these problems, especially from an injury standpoint on defense, get better almost by the possession with the guys who are taking those players' spots. And I think this Alabama team looks formidable, especially with that offense.
Well, Alabama's who I thought they were. I think if you look at the best offenses in the country and not factor in the defense and special teams, they're right there at the top. With Tua playing the way he is, he just set the Alabama school record for career touchdown passes. He's thrown 81 touchdown passes against 9 interceptions.
Crazy. In
his 3 years there. This year,
and we saw one of the interceptions.
This year, the ratio is 27-1. We saw his first interception. He is so smart. He throws on time. He's very, very accurate. He's the leader for the Heisman Trophy. So that offense with their running game, with their receivers, Jerry Jeudy, a great offensive line, they will move the ball on anybody. And we'll get to their weakness, their defense. has not been tested yet by a really good team that can keep them in the game. But they're going to give up some yards. They're going to give up some points. And when you look ahead toward the playoff, this is not the Alabama defense in early October that we're going to see in December, let's say December 29th, right? They're going to get better and better.
It's funny because you look at showdown games as you're looking at a college season before it starts, and it's really funny now. The showdown game in the SEC West is definitely Alabama and LSU in a couple of weeks. And you look in the Big Ten, here's Ohio State. Everybody talks about the Big Ten East, and definitely Penn State is better than I think a lot of people thought it would be at this point. But Ohio State, man, its path to the college football playoff is definitely going to have to include a win over a Big Ten West team. I'm talking about in the regular season before they even get to the Big Ten championship game. When you see how Wisconsin manhandled Michigan State the other night, it was unbelievable.
Well, what's going to be interesting, these next 7 weeks in college football are going to be as good as it gets. Next week, you got Michigan going to Penn State next week. The end of October, you got Wisconsin going to Ohio State. Early November, you have LSU going to Tuscaloosa.
Yes.
Those games right there are going to determine 2 of the college football playoff. Still people that will be alive going to the championship games. But the matchups and the crossover games in conferences with Wisconsin playing Ohio State, it's just as good as it gets. So what makes a game so great.
Well, this was funny because, like I said, the big narrative out there is the Big Ten West. Big Ten East is where the power is. The Big Ten West, is a rummy dummy. People can't just get past the fact. Just look at the preseason polls and look who Wisconsin has beaten from the Big Ten East.
Right.
Michigan and Michigan State outscored them
handily,
72 to 14, I think it is.
Mm-hmm.
Crazy how they've gotten that program back on track in a year. I mean, Paul Christ. Real quick before we go, and I've got a segment coming up with Austin Ward, just talking about Ohio State and what big surprises we expect to see from Ohio State as the season goes forward from the halfway point. But how do you think, just from the eyeball test, Ohio State matches up with Alabama at this point? What do you see there that is either encouraging or discouraging for Ohio State fans in a possible matchup with Alabama?
I think it's very encouraging with Alabama. I think it's very encouraging with Clemson, too, as well, because Ohio State, for the first time in recent years, has a defense that can hang with these teams. Now, you're not going to stop them every series, but you want to stop them every other series, every third, 2 out of 3 series. You just can't let them go up and down the field to keep the ball away from your offense. Ohio State's special teams are very good. The defense is so much better than it was last year. So a lot of these teams, I think Clemson's regressed a little bit. I think Ohio State has improved quite a bit on defense.
Yeah.
And with that offense they have, now what they don't have, and we all know it, is depth at quarterback. So as long as that number 1 stays healthy and they keep him in the game and maybe don't run him as much until they need him, they're going to be right there at the end, I think. And I just think they're as balanced as any team in the country. Offense, defense, special teams. Their star talent, their wide receiver talent, J.K. Dobbins, their offensive line is gelling. They got everything, every ingredient it takes to win a national championship. They just got to remain focused week to week and not jump ahead of themselves. And they got to avoid that letdown that happened in recent years at Iowa and at Purdue under Urban Meyer's teams. And so far, you don't see it happening.
Yeah, I agree. But I also like to say, pop quiz, name Alabama's backup quarterback, name Clemson's backup quarterback, name LSU's backup quarterback. Everybody, all these teams, name Oklahoma's backup quarterback. I can actually name him, but the bottom line is Jalen Hurts is playing extremely well. All those starters, Joe Burrow making a bid for the Heisman Trophy right in front of our eyes. All of these teams are reliant on that first string, big time, high profile talent at quarterback, and it'd be very interesting if something happened to any of those teams in that regard, which could really change the complexion of this national championship race.
That being said, this is unique because that's Clemson, Alabama, LSU mentioned. They got a 4-star guy behind him somewhere. We don't know. Ohio State does not have that right now. They got 2 gentlemen. One came from Kentucky, one came from West Virginia, and neither one of them were slated to win those jobs. So I don't want to say MAC level. I'm not going to use that term. But the drop-off would still be greater if Justin Fields goes down versus any of the 3 you mentioned.
Right. I mean, I think everybody agrees with that, but they still might, with a refurbished running game they've got going, which a lot of us relying on that threat from the running quarterback. they still might be able to make some things happen. You know, we'll talk about that down the road if in fact it happens. Hey, Jeff, I really appreciate you being on my show, man. And you and I have had quite the tour of Southeast Texas, you know, having dinner with my brother on the 15th floor of his high rise, and, you know, all this stuff. We've been through Texas A&M, College Station, went up to visit my mom with me up in Lufkin, and here we are back in Southeast Texas at the Kemah Boardwalk. And we've had quite the little tour here, and it's kind of refreshing to get away, you know, a little bit and see the way other people play football around the country. But I'm telling you, this Ohio State team, like you just pointed out, has all the ingredients of being in that national picture in the end if it can keep its act together.
Yeah, you're right, Tim. Hey, thanks for having me. You know, I lived here 37 years ago, Southeast Texas. I covered the old Southwest Conference. I lived in Baytown, worked for the Baytown Sun or Clear Lake City. And it was a good look back at my life where I started out after I left Ohio State in 1982.
Yeah.
So I enjoyed it. We had a blast this week, and thanks for having me on your podcast.
Yeah, we both cut our teeth in small town newspapers in East Texas. Yeah. And it was great. But anyway, you know, we'll be back in a moment. I've got Austin Ward. We're going to talk about maybe some things you should watch that could develop on this Ohio State football team as the season moves into the second half. And there's some people rising, not the least of which is freshman wide receiver Garrett Wilson, who, by the way, is from right here in the great state of Texas, Lake Travis. But we'll be back in a moment after this word from our sponsor.
Hey, college football fans, it's Zach Bourne here. You need to check out BetDSI.com. BetDSI is a great way to use your sports knowledge to make some extra cash. That's right. BetDSI is the top-rated online sportsbook. They've been paying winners for over 20 years. The reason they've been around that long is because they have got the fastest payouts in the industry. Plus, the user interface and mobile site is the best in the business. Play, win, and get paid. It's that simple. It doesn't matter if it's college football, the NFL, NBA, NHL, UFC, esports, reality TV, virtually anything. You can bet it. You can bet on it at betdsi.com and get paid right now. There's no better way to add some excitement to games that you already are watching. Check out their live betting, where you can bet on games throughout the entire matchup, every play, and every minute until the end. BetDSI has a special deal for Lettermen Row fans. Use the promo code ROW100 to get a 100% bonus match. That's more than double. That's right, more than double your money to start winning today. Once again, go to betdsi.com and use promo code ROW100 and get this limited 100% bonus offer to make some extra cash on the sports you know and love. BetDSI promo code ROW100. Now back to the show.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Boy, an off week. We don't get an off week. Boston, what's up with that, man?
Never get to stop. I mean, once college football arrives, you just go. Sometimes I would try and sneak away to Texas a little bit, like you, maybe.
Like I just did, yeah.
And see my family and folks. This time it's just kind of, this season snuck up on me. It was like I couldn't wrap my mind around leaving, and you know, I tried to stay in Columbus and work on a couple features that for our fine folks that read LettermenRow.com and stuff that people enjoyed. This year I've just kind of been into it. It's like I've been enjoying covering this team, and I didn't really want to sneak away too much.
Well, I was going to say, ostensibly, I snuck down there to go see my mom in Lufkin, but really, I went down there to see the number one team in the country, Alabama, play at Texas A&M, which, you know, Texas A&M has had its ups and downs, but I wanted to get a first-hand look on what how Alabama compares.
Right.
Actually, I wanted to just go see the game because I've rarely gotten to go see games as a fan.
I know.
Matter of fact, I can't remember the last time I went to a college football game as a fan. It was a long time ago, like when I was a youngster.
I'm glad you got a chance to, because I won by a week 5 or 6 years ago. I went back for Wyoming's homecoming, and it's just, I mean, that's obviously different than what I cover now.
Yeah.
Like being in the shoe every week in Big Ten football, but it's like it's so different. You forget about, you know, because I go in 3 hours before kickoff for work. I don't tailgate. You know, when we sit up in the horseshoe, the windows are closed. You don't hear the sounds. Yeah. It's like you kind of forget why everyone else loves college football so much and being in the stadium.
Yeah.
Because, you know, we love it, and for a different reason, but it puts money in our pocket, and food on our table. But
yes.
But you do. I think it is great to get a reminder of just why everyone else loves college football.
Oh, my goodness. I'm getting to do this pregame show, you know, every week now with 97.1 The Fan, and for 2 hours, all we do is talk football, and we're right in the middle, right there, when we're live, we're out there right outside St. John Arena. When the team goes to the team walk to the skull session, and the bands, they go right by us. And you're right. I mean, it's when I was a little kid going to Alabama games. I know there's some people on here can't stand the fact I grew up in Alabama. You're from where you're from, right? Christopher Columbus was from Europe, but he helped discover America. But I digress. The bottom line, but it's just watching guys go by, watching the fans, they drop in, and all kind of Corny Green was down there a couple of weeks ago, right to my right, signing autographs because he was being inducted into the Rose Bowl Hall of Fame. But all this stuff that's going on around us, and really all we're interested in is what's Ohio State going to call on 3rd and 3, and boy, we're going to really hammer Ryan Day for that call.
Right.
All right, let's get right to it here real quick. This won't take long. What have you seen in the first 6 games? And this is a wide open, obtuse question, as they said in Shawshank Redemption. But what have you seen in the first 6 games from Ohio State offensively that you think they will build off of that will carry them through the next 6 games and possibly get to Indianapolis?
Yeah, I think what will get them there is the success of this offensive line. We broke it down for months coming in. They didn't know exactly how it was going to break down out of spring ball. They were dealing with injuries there. Munford wasn't in there. Jonah Jackson wasn't even on campus yet. 4 new full-time starters. How is this offensive line going to look? How can they come together? I think they've been the best overall unit in the Big Ten through 6 weeks. And if everything I just said is still true, we've talked about Justin Fields getting more experience and getting started at quarterback. Well, that's going to be the same case for Wyatt Davis as he continues to get more experience at guard. Got Brandon Bowen and Josh Albee, the work that they've done at right tackle. Josh Myers, this is his first season as a center, and he's been absolutely incredible, I think, for a first-time starter, given all the importance of that center position. And then we know what Munford can do, and Jonah Jackson has already proven himself in the Big Ten before, and he's playing at a high level. So it starts with those 5 guys up front, and they've been better. I thought they had the potential to be all Big Ten caliber performers, all 5 of them.
Yeah.
But you still have to go do it. And I think they've gotten there faster than I thought they would.
For me, because I'm not going to pick the offensive line because you just did it, but everything, you can't launch Apollo 11 without the launching pad, right? So that's why I've always looked at it, and it's Saturn V booster, man, one of the greatest machines ever built by man. But I digress. Past that, the astronauts, the guys up in the capsule, the guy who is obviously Justin Fields. We've talked about him ad nauseum now for 2 weeks, the way he's progressed. J.K. Dobbins, you had a sense he was going to be back on the beam, especially with a running threat at quarterback. We can talk about how lean he is now from 12% body fat to 8% body fat. I just wish I could get to 12% body fat.
Once you get to 12, it's easy to get to 8.
His speed has gotten better, et cetera. The rise of Master Teague III, obvious to everybody, gives them that fastball and that hard ball, as for one of another term.
Right.
Remember – I don't know if you ever played baseball, but some guys throw the ball and it hits your glove and it hurts for 3 days.
Pops, yep.
Yeah, and you got to catch it again in 5 seconds. But I digress. But all that, we've seen the tight ends each have big time moments,
right?
Not games, but moments,
just sporadic moments.
But the most interesting development through the first 6 games, it's pretty obvious that number 5, Garrett Wilson, is going to figure more heavily into the receiver plans moving forward. He was in there early and often again against Michigan State 2 weeks ago. I don't see that changing barring injury, and I'm just interested to see how Brian Hartline is going to play that revolving door at wide receiver.
Yeah, he wants to get to that 6-man rotation that used to be criticized until you were stocking it with 6 really good players, right?
Yeah.
That makes a huge difference.
Yes.
And so, Garrett Wilson has earned that right now. I think it was maybe week 4 or so, Jalen Harris was still getting some of those reps. And Garrett Wilson, look, he's a 5-star. We all know how athletic he was coming out of Lake Travis. Great kid, great personality as well. Got to go get to know him while he was still in high school and covered his recruitment.
Hey, what a great area of the country right there.
I love it, Hill Country.
I know. Go ahead.
That's where I wanted to go, down to New Braunfels.
Well, that's where your parents live.
We'll get back to that later.
Yeah.
But it is a transition still. Just because you are that gifted doesn't mean you get to go out and play right away, or that you even can, or even maybe that the coaching staff feels like you should, because you do have to earn the stripes, and that's a bit of a cliche, but it is for a reason. And you have to learn what Brian Hartline wants you to do on the practice field. You have to learn 9 routes and not just one.
Yeah.
And that takes a little bit of time. And so when we talk about these first timers getting experience, it's not just lip service, and it's not just because they feel like you need to go through 2 months. Like, you have to be ready to play in the Big Ten.
Yeah.
For a team that wants to win a national championship, you need to be at an elite level week in and week out, and they can't afford to have Garrett Wilson or anybody else, Austin Mack or senior Benjamin Victor. If you don't know every responsibility, if you can't run every route that they could use, if you don't have the ability to extend plays and help Justin Fields and know the scramble drill rules, you can't be out there.
Right.
And now, but you're seeing that, and you said it, that's going to keep happening, because when the light goes on for him, he's got an upside that few players do.
Yeah, it's funny because I remember first year I covered Ohio State football as a beat writer was 1984. They had a freshman wide receiver named Chris Carter, C-R-I-S, no H, and he had you watched him in practice. I mean, he was, like I said, it was a joy to watch. Back then we got to watch football practice,
yeah.
And it was a joy watching. He made 2 or 3 catches every practice where you went, wow.
Yeah.
And not just me, the team did, But then after, like midway through the season, they kind of went with the older guys, you're giving the older guys their shot because they put in the work, and number 2, they know the system, et cetera. And it finally becomes apparent this guy's got to play. Now, I'm not saying right now that Garrett Wilson's going to supplant Benjamin Victor or KJ Hill
right.
or Austin Mack or whomever in the importance factor. I think, like you said, they think he's pretty important because he's getting out there early and often.
Yeah.
But you will see him continue to rise, barring injury, as this year goes on, as a more trusted receiver. I mean, just hauling in that dime he did in the left corner of the end zone from Justin Fields at Nebraska a few weeks ago. That was just and he didn't get 2 feet down, he got 3 feet down.
I think he got 5 feet.
He
down.
went tippy tip like that.
And then
it was
takes a big hit, not just from a defender, but into a wall.
Exactly. So I just see that he's a gamer. I mean, you can just see the way he plays the game, the savvy with which he plays wide receiver, and I've talked to Brian Hartline a bunch of times about a lot of things, and one of the things is you do give the guys who know the system, have been there for a while. You do give them their chances, not necessarily the benefit of the doubt. There's a big difference, but then it comes that moment where you move on, and I think we're seeing that in the wide receiver room.
And I'll just say quickly that the last part of that is that you talk about veteran guys knowing the system. It's also a matter of trust is earned. So if somebody has been around for 3 years, or just even 2 years with Brian Hartline, he knows what he can expect from those guys, and he's still learning that from Garrett Wilson. Or Jamison Williams, who's another guy who's probably, when we're forecasting the second half,
I was going to bring him up, but go ahead.
That might play a big role down the stretch, and they love the practice habits that kid has, and he's with his speed, he's only going to get more opportunities because, hey, you can never have too much of that.
Well, my big deal right now, if I'm a football coach, I've drawn plays like I've told you all my life, but you can take into consideration who is that O. What's that O all about, And I don't understand why 3 plays a game, they don't put Jameson Williams out wide. I'm wide left or right.
And just go.
And if you see man coverage, you just go. And if you don't, you throw to the other side or do something else. But that, to me, is an option they're going to exercise sooner or later in this season, I do believe, because he can outrun coverage. And so we'll see if it gets that pay. Real quick, before we go, back to the defense a little bit. Who do you think will emerge on this defense that people haven't really been paying much attention to? Well, it's kind of hard to do now because they're playing like 20 guys. And
I was going to say, the initial instinct is just to say and blurt out Josh Proctor.
Yeah.
But we pay a lot of attention to him, and he was starting to. He was out there.
By the way, for people not watching, we just did a fist bump because I've been touting Josh Proctor.
And I had to make
sure that he showed up from Owasso.
That I had to jump in before you had your chance to name him. He was out there, and look, they had a couple packages. You touched on this last week, Tim, that the defense, they have a lot of different groupings of personnel. And you pointed out right away, don't know if it's the bullet, but you had Sean Wade, Damon Arnett.
3 corners and a safety out there.
3 corners and a safety. But there was also some packages where I noticed, and I said, hey, there's your boy.
Yeah.
And Josh Proctor's out there with Jordan Fuller. a more traditional look.
Yeah, they mixed it up.
So they've got that in their back pocket, and I think that, he's got some of this dynamic athleticism. He's not going to do a lot of the things that Shaun Wade does, but I think he could do that if they needed. He's versatile. I think they really want him to make sure that he's got down the fuller responsibilities in case something happens.
You would not want Josh Proctor on your team in two-man volleyball, beach volleyball, on your team, because he would try to hit the ball every time. You follow my drift?
Yeah.
I mean, he wants to be where the ball is on every play.
He does.
And it's, I don't know if you'd rather have him tipping it up to you or spiking it. But I think, like you said, when he settles down more and more, he's going to become more. In fact, I agree with you 100%. The other thing is Haskell Garrett has quietly become a force inside, spelling, those guys, Devon Hamilton, Jayshon Cornell, B.B. Landers. Man, he gives you unbelievable effort when he's in there, et cetera. Those are guys I'm going to see. Obviously you're seeing B.B. Landers a lot, but I think you're going to see both those guys even more as this goes on.
Yeah, you're right. So, and here's one more name for you that's, I think probably people know it. They're going to pay attention to it, but Zach Harrison is ahead of schedule.
Yes.
I thought, look, Ohio State's not opposed to playing these true freshman pass rushers, get them involved in the Rushman package. But even Nick Bosa, Joey Bosa, Chase Young, when they were true freshmen, it wasn't quite, I think, to this level where Zach Harrison is.
2 weeks ago, when they got into Wall Street, which we used to call it in the old days, it was Zach Harrison was out there with Chase Young, and I think – who was the other guy? Was it Cooper?
Yeah, Cooper.
It might have been Cooper. It might have been Tyreek Smith, actually. But anyway, then on the edge, that's when they sprang Baron Browning on that ridiculous sack he had where nobody touched him because the guy got – but you're right about Zach Harrison. It's obvious. Now, he's benefited from
injuries,
from the Jonathan Cooper being on a pitch count and Tyreek Smith being banged, but he's taking advantage of it.
And Tyler Friday as well. He didn't play against Michigan State. So part of that is a little bit necessity, but
opportunity,
but not necessary. But still, only because Ohio State wants to play so many guys. If Larry Johnson really believed that Chase Young could be effective, or at his absolute best, playing 70 snaps, then best believe that they would leave him out there to do it.
Yeah.
But nobody is. So at least Ohio State's different in a lot of other places where they have others, Iowa, whoever else. You got to leave your superstar out there because you just don't have 5 stars waiting on the bench to come in.
Right.
So it's a tribute to Ohio State's recruiting, and it's also, I think, a massive tip of the hat to Larry Johnson that what I was trying to say early on was I didn't think that Zach Harrison, he would have the level of competition is so much bigger, obviously in the Big Ten, than what he was doing at this time last year with Olentangy Orange, right? I mean that's no offense to them.
Speed kills though. Kills.
But that sometimes there were games where I'd see the highlights and it was like, well, what is he even getting out of this? And does he understand the motor that it's going to take to play with? And I thought it might take him longer, just to compare it to Garrett Wilson, playing that high level in Texas. And I've seen him play state championship games when Matthew Baldwin gets hurt and he takes over a game as a junior. I thought that he would have an instant impact. I didn't know that Zach Harrison could or would do that. And he has been way ahead of where I thought he would be.
Ladies and gentlemen, that's what this is all about, is the fact they've got, like I've said, they've got a really nice group of guys who returned, who were starters last year, offensively and defensively. Mm-hmm. They've got a really nice group of what I call rising journeymen who've been there for a while. And then
Cornell.
And then you got a Zach Harrison and a Garrett Wilson. I mean, this team is getting better every week from a depth standpoint right in front of your eyes. It's been amazing to watch. Last thing before we go, fan or foe of Friday night football?
No, I'm a foe. It's
FAUX or FOE?
No, I hate it. How about that?
All right.
I get it that a lot of scheduling has to account for all the millions of dollars that are brought in with the broadcast deal. I'm fine with it, and especially this year I'm fine with it because it has meant more noon kickoffs, which I think is what they're going to get for the Wisconsin game when normally people would expect that to be in prime time. I like Saturday at noon. I don't have any complaints about it, but moving –
Well, traditional was 1:30 1:30 in the afternoon on Saturday till every game was on television.
Yeah. Moving it to Friday night, and I don't go to high school football games. That's like the one night of the week where I get to relax and get ready for the next day, game day, and all that sort of stuff.
We do it on Thursday now.
Yeah, well, maybe.
Yeah, I am. I'm not a fan of it either. I think it does take away from high school football. If you think a lot of people aren't going to stay away from Ohio high school football games this Friday night to be able to watch Ohio State. Now the great thing is you can watch Ohio State right there in the stands now. What's one of the beauties of modern euphoria? But the flip side is that they're not going to be in bars or sitting at home watching this game is crazy. I mean, this is the number 3 team in the country on a road game where they going against the team they played in the Big Ten championship game last year. Not by any sort of imagination the same team.
Right.
If you've been keeping your eye on Northwestern, but the bottom line is it will affect. See, I don't think Purdue versus Indiana affects on a Friday night in Indiana would affect attendance at Indiana high school games. We're talking apples and oranges, if you follow my drift.
And I think, too, like, this might sound hypocritical or whatever. To me, it's okay to not sometimes play on Saturday. The Thursday night games, I actually enjoy those, and if they're a one-off and you make sure that you can balance the schedule, and Ohio State did have their bye week before this one, like, okay, that's fine. And that's where maybe the high school football factor comes into it. If Ohio State played on a Thursday night, would there have been as much outrage or upset about it? Probably not, because it's not going to impact. I think there's a pretty big game in Pickerington this week that a rivalry that people want to watch.
Yeah.
And why would you make those people pick between Ohio State and their local high school team and everything that's on the line?
Well, what I've been
there?
telling people too, though, is this game starts at 8:30 Eastern Daylight Saving Time, not 7:30.
Yeah.
So, and the way college football games go now, they last four and a half to 5 hours.
You're going to see all 3 quarters.
Yeah, you'll be able to see 3/4 of it after your high school football game is over. That is without a doubt, because it won't kick off at 8:30. It'll kick off about 8:50. 8:45. And so, that's where I stand. I don't. Who knows? I mean, Ohio State's an overwhelming favorite in this game. Should win it handily.
How long do you think the grass is going to be?
It's going to be I have settings on my zero turn, and I can make it 4 inches. You got to figure.
Just let it. They're just going to let it grow all week.
We couldn't buy gas for the lawnmower this week. Sorry, folks, but I'm not sure that's still going to help them very much.
No, but it.
By the way, I think they play on artificial turf.
Oh, do they change it?
Yeah.
Oh man, what? So the old jokes are gone?
I don't know. I mean, I'm trying to remember what Dice Stadium, what it looks like right now. I thought they replaced it a long time ago, but maybe not. Maybe not.
I guess that shows how
the nicest lawn in the Big Ten. Is that what you're trying to say?
How closely I've been paying attention to Northwestern home games this season.
Yeah, I feel embarrassed because I should know the answer to that. But
I thought
anyway,
that was the big deal. Like, what was that, the 13 game or 14 game with Bosa scrambling around there for this? The fumble recovery, and they'd slowed down the offense and all that stuff.
Yeah, but anyway.
But if my joke is 5 years past its expiration date, then so be it.
I got you. Ladies and gentlemen, that's another Tim May podcast. I really appreciate you tuning in, listening and watching, or listening or watching. I always like having my friend on, Boston Ward, who does a great job covering Ohio State football for Lettermen Row. And I'm glad I was be able to give you a little bit of insight in what I think of what a lot of people consider to be the top team in the country, Alabama, from watching them live. And I'll be honest with you, man, this isn't like the old days where I used to root for Alabama. I mean, I'm a objective observer anymore. I don't really care. I do care about Lufkin High School football still, but then past that, I could take it or leave it. I'm not sure what it would be like to cover Nick Saban, for example, on a weekly basis, but I'm sure it would be an adventure. But you know what? Until next week, this is Tim May. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for watching. Subscribe below to get the latest videos from Lettermen Row.
We got Letterman Live, we've got the practice report, we got rapid reaction. Hey, and we got Buckeye IQ with Zach Bourne.
For sure. We got recruiting breakdowns with Berm. We got whatever you need. Ohio State football and Ohio State athletics, we've got you covered here at Lettermen Row.